Peace, Hotep, Islam. Rise and give honors to the Prophet, Noble Jew Ali. Rise and give honors to Allah. And we give honors to all the Moors that remain and stay active and following out what Noble Jew Ali ordered for the Moors to do. Today we're going to start off with, as usual, dealing with the bills. First thing, don't forget this Sunday, Brother Adisa L and Kudro L lecture, the Django or Django Unchained. It's all about nationality, and that's going to be happening at the temple in Canaanland, right? The lecture is starting at 4 p.m. and we're going to go until we get this in and get everything in that we're supposed to get in. Again, it's going to be at 1704 Eglinton Avenue West at the new Moorish Science Temple in Canaanland. Secondly, Sunday, March 24th, 2013, we have a Skype lecture by Brother Abdullah L. Talib Mozi Bey. If you don't know about Brother Abdullah, you need to check out moorishciviletter.net. So Moorish Civil Letter, CIVILETTR.net. And that's going to be Sunday, March 24th, 2013. The lecture is at 4 p.m. and the lecture is entitled The Astronomy and Geometry of Masonry and Christianity. So we're sending a call out to all the people in Canaanland who think that, Moors are Masons and, we're Shriners and all that. And for all the people who think that Jesus Christ is their Lord and Savior, Brother Abdullah L. Talib Mozi Bey is going to be going in on the subject at hand. All right. Also, remember that the Moorish Science Temple of America in Canaanland is also a Moorish museum. So any individuals who are seeking to learn about the Moorish movement, about the history of the Moors throughout the world, you can come and visit the Moorish Museum on Saturdays between 1 and 6 p.m. You would have to call to make an appointment to book your group or your individual tour. It's 647-748-6664. And that's the contact number for the museum in Canaanland. Right. Another thing that we're going to be doing, Saturday and Sunday nights at the temple, we're going to be having documentary and movie night. So for those people who are interested in seeing all these movies that we've been referencing that speak about the Moors and documentaries that deal with the Moorish paradigm, you could contact 647-210-3175. And that's Brother Khalid L. And he's the one that's in charge of the movie night and the documentary night. So come and watch and discuss documentaries and movies of Moorish culture. Moorish movie night, Saturday and Sunday, 8 p.m. to 8 p.m. and it's $5. And that's again at 1704 Eglinton Avenue West. Contact number again, 647-210-3175. And don't forget, every Sunday we got our Canaanland Moors classes from 4 to 7 p.m. And that's also happening at the Moorish Science Temple at 1704 Eglinton Avenue West. We have in our territory, we got March break coming up. So keep in mind that the Kupigana and Gumi self-defense and warrior science our brother who's been our brother who's been doing tremendous work with young people is having a March break I Am Courage camp. And the March break I Am Courage camp is going to be happening at the temple. The schedule should be on the website canaanlandmoors.webs.com or iamcourage.webs.com. It's starting March 11th and it's going until March 15th. Youth Courage March Break Camp, ages 4 to 14. This March break, your child will have the chance to experience a compact version of the Courage Rites of Passage program. Your child will learn the principles and practice of Kupigana Ngumi, bracket self-defense, MMA. Participate in edutaining, education plus entertainment, games and activities, create unique crafts, meet new friends, and develop the courage to lead. The Courage Self-Defense Mixed Martial Arts program gives children the opportunity to grow themselves and build their confidence. Programming includes self-defense techniques, mixed martial arts training, movies and games, arts and crafts, skills showcase expo, camp courage gear, and healthy snacks. It's starting at 7:30 a.m. and it's going until 5 p.m. For info, you can contact wearecourage@gmail.com or phone number 647-764-2810. As well, as I said before, you can go to the iamcourage.webs.com website. And that's going to be taking place at 1704 Eglinton Avenue West, Toronto, Ontario. And that's upstairs at the temple. Again, Kupigana Ngumi, self-defense and martial arts, mixed martial arts, The Courage March Break program provides children with a platform to gain and sustain knowledge and wisdom of spiritual, mental, and physical health through self-defense training. This training process gives the initiate a point of reference to their self-accomplishments and encourages healthy development and positive growth from one stage of life to the next. Initiates develop the necessary skills which assist initiates to navigate citizenship within one's nation. And again, the contact phone number is 647-764-2810, and you can email iamcourage at wearecourage@gmail.com, or you can go to the website www.iamcourage.webs.com. All right. I think that's it. I think that's it for all the bills. So let's get down to work. This is from last week, Wednesday, February 27th, 2013. Focus on the brother, right? Ignoring racial taunts. York Region Police Officer Damien Muirhead is the focus of a hearing at York Regional Police Headquarters. He is accused of not investigating racial taunts allegedly made to him by people at a rowdy farm party he was dispatched to. Muirhead is seen walking out of the hearing on lunch break. Story on page 3. So, caption: Black cop allegedly subjected to racial taunts faces charges. Right? So the officer, right, Brother Muirhead, and keep in mind, Muirhead is Muirhead, right? And Muir, M-U-I-R, is a Scottish word for more. All right, that's just what it is. So this officer's name is Damien Moorhead. So we're gonna call him Damien Moorhead for the rest of the program, right? Black cop allegedly subjected to racial taunts faces charges. So this cop, he was subjected to racial taunts, and they're charging him, right? York Regional Police Officer charged with neglect of duty for not investigating racial threat allegations against himself. A black York region, and we can see that the brother's brown right here, okay, right? You can see that he's brown, and we can see that he has a Moorhead, right? A black York Regional Police officer faces misconduct charges for his handling of a farm party turned ugly when he was allegedly subjected to repeated racial taunts and told words to the effect of, "I would love to see that guy hanging from a tree." The target of the alleged lynching remark, Constable Damien Moorhead, is scheduled to attend police disciplinary hearings Tuesday and Wednesday. He faces Police Act charges of insubordination, discreditable conduct, and neglect of duty after a civilian alleges he was rudely treated on the Victoria Day long weekend in May 2013 right now. The ugly altercation came after Moorhead was dispatched to investigate an incident when a woman was seriously injured when someone ran over her with a four-wheeler off-road vehicle at a party. In Moorhead's version of the incident, investigating officers could see two shirtless males who appeared to be hiding on the farm. Moorhead told police investigators he and two fellow officers immediately met with the hostile resistance by approximately 15 individuals who had been drinking. None of the partygoers would identify themselves, admit that the suspect had been on the premises, or provide identification, Moorhead said in his defense. So these people didn't even show identification, right? Let one of these people out here get stopped by Popo and not show ID, and tell me if they don't get charged with something. In Moorhead's version of the story, he remained professional and ignored the racial taunts as he checked the license plates. Things got particularly ugly when Moorhead decided to run an ownership check of license plates of the vehicles parked at the farm. During the check, a jacket on a motorcycle fell onto the ground. A man with clenched fists quickly and aggressively approached him, ordered him to pick up my expletive jacket, Moorhead said. At this point, according to Moorhead's explanation to his police superiors, he stepped back to de-escalate the tension while the fellow officer and the man who owned the jacket yelled at each other, with the motorcyclist calling the police officer a quote-unquote pig. The racial taunts continued with comments on the darkness of his skin, not the blackness of his skin, the darkness of his skin. And someone saying, "I would love to see that guy hanging from a tree," Moorhead said. Partygoer Rail the guy of Aurora filed a written complaint on Moorhead's conduct to the Office of the Independent Police Review Director. So that's the OIPRD. And that's like the low-level people that you go to when you have a complaint against police. But, don't worry about even complaining, because obviously they don't do their job. His May 25, 2011 complaint does not refer to any comments about lynching or racial taunts. Duguay complained that Moorhead dropped his leather motorcycle jacket and his 8-year-old daughter's motorcycle helmet onto the dirt without apology. The complaint to the office of the Independent Police Review Director was referred to York Regional Police, who charged Moorhead with neglect of duty for not investigating the allegations of racial threats. That's how they do black people, right? So if you want to be black, cool. But if your name's Moorhead, and people are calling you black, but your name's Moorhead, right? This is documented evidence and fact that if you're black, you get the doo-doo end of the stick if you're black, right? Because he didn't even do anything wrong, right? According to Moorhead's explanation to his police superiors, he stepped back to de-escalate the tension while a fellow officer and the man who owned the jacket yelled at each other. Right? The other officer didn't know, they weren't talking about they want to see him hanging from a tree. Right? And again, clearly, the article described his complexion as dark, not black. So we have to accept the fact that people know that we're not black people, and that's just a tag that they want to slap onto us in order for them to abuse us, right? So be mindful of people who want to slap tags on you, because when they slap tags on you, you're going to be sorry. Ask Brother Moorhead, right? Got a text from a brother today, my brethren Robbie, right? Brethren Robbie texts me, he says, yo, you need to go get this book, Russia and the Negro, Blacks in Russian History and Throughout, by Allison Blakely. And Allison Blakely's a brother. Russia and the Negro. Alright? So we'll just... Alright, so big up Brother Robbie for this one. The ethnic origin of the Abkhazians, Abkhazians, of African descent, and how Africans arrived in Abkhazia is still a matter of dispute among experts. Historians agree that the settlement of Africans in a number of villages in the village of ADZYUBZHA ADZYUBZHA in Abkhazia, then part of the Ottoman Empire, is likely to have happened in the 17th century. According to one version, a few hundred slaves were bought and brought to Shervashidis, SHERVASHIDZE. Right? So a few hundred slaves were bought and brought by Shervashidi princes to work on the citrus plantations. This case was a unique and apparently not entirely successful case of mass import of Africans to the Black Sea coast. Let me stop there for a second. According to the book, what Brother Robbie was texting me all day. He sent me like 50 texts because he was reading the book as he was texting me, and he's just sending stuff to me that hit him. Black Sea comes from the Moors who used to navigate those seas. That's why they call the Black Sea, because it was really Moors that was navigating that sea at one time, right? So we continue. According to another theory, Abkhazians of African descent are the descendants of Colchians, Colchians, the inhabitants of the ancient kingdom of Colchis, Colchis, in present-day western Georgia. However, the question of the likelihood of at least some continuity between the ancient Colchians and current Abkhazians of African descent is not known, because there is no available reliable evidence of the existence of an African population in historic Kolkhi, Kolkhi. They may also derive from the Egyptian Copts or Ethiopian Jews. So there they go, admitting that Jews are Ethiopian. Abkhazian writer Dmitry Gulia, in the book History of Abkhazia, compared the place names of Abkhazia and corresponding names in Ethiopia, and claimed that some of the geographical names are identical. Bagadi, Gunma, and Tabakar. In 1927, keep the date, Noble Ali, 1913 to 1929. In 1927, the Russian writer Maxim Gorky, together with the Abkhaz writer Samson Chanba, visited the village of Adzyubza, Adzyubzha, and met elderly Africans there. Based on his visit and comparison of his observations with the published data, he felt that the Ethiopian version of the origin of Abkhazians of African descent is true. Legends. There are a number of folk legends that might be based partly on true events. According to one of them, which is mentioned in the memorandum of Ivan Isakov, 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 to Nikita Khrushchev, Khrushchev, an Ottoman ship wrecked near the Abkhazian coast during a storm, with slaves who were brought up for sale, and the current Abkhazians of African descent are the descendants of survivors from the ship who founded the colony of Abkhazia. This legend, however, does not explain how such a ship could have entered waters of the Black Sea, which is so far from major shipping lanes of the slave trade of that time. We're going to read that part again. The legend, however, does not explain how such a ship could have entered the waters of the Black Sea, which is so far from major shipping lanes of the slave trade of that time. Another legend tells us about the dealings of Narts, Narts, with certain black-faced people from the Horn of Africa. The legendary Narts are said to have come back to the Caucasus from a long African campaign with hundreds of African escorts who remained in Abkhazia. In a third legend, the appearance of Abkhazians of African descent is involved with Peter the Great. He imported many black Africans to Russia, and it is said that those who were unable to acclimate to the northern capital of Russia, St. Petersburg, were then generously given to Abkhazian princes. According to the history candidate Igor Burtsev, so Igorburtsev, there could have been a few dozen such gifts of Peter to Abkhazian princes. Perhaps more than one of the several scientific hypotheses and legends has come true. Many of them are not inherently exclusive but complementary. So this is the part where it gets good now. So what you're going to do is you're going to Google search Abkhazians, Abkhazians, and this is one of the pictures that's going to come up. This is one of the pictures that's going to come up of the Abkhazians in Russia. And then if you see, you look at the brother's pants right there, you can see that he's got the pantaloons on, right, the hammer pants, right? You can see the top that he's wearing, similar to the swirling dervishes. And obviously we know the headdress is the headdress of the Moors, the legendary and immaculate fez. So we were in Russia too, as Moors, because there's a fez right there. Even though they say Africans in the article, and the brother called the book Blacks of Russia, right? Face the facts, not the frauds, right? And then when you check up Alison Blakely, he has this book, Blacks in the Dutch World, the Evolution of Racial Imagery in a Modern Society. Blacks in the Dutch World. Now, we're talking about Moors, even though he says black, but, Brother Blakely, when you check his credentials, you know that he's Boule, and he got fiat to put out black books to keep the people black so they don't know about their birthright. Alright? Face the facts, not the fraud. And we need to accept the reality that we are Moors. Right? And again, just to stress the point, big up to Brother Sabir Bey and Sister Santasha for keeping the Civil Alert power alive. Go on to the Civil Alert blog talk, and there's a lecture or a class or presentation or whatever you want to call it, interview on there with Brother Taj, and it's on Noble Drew Ali. And Brother Taj is talking about him having a conversation with Ivan Van Sertima, and Ivan Van Sertima admitting, for the record, that he can't talk about Moors from a first party perspective, or he would be deported back to Honduras. Right? So there's an obvious blackout with regard to the people that we say are the scholars, or the people that we look up to get information. Right? There's an obvious blackout on putting the term Moor out there from the perspective that that's who we are. If we check all these people's books, except Moors, they never say we the Moors. They always say the Moors, those Moors, African Moors, Arab Moors. They never, the author, who's a Moor, never presents the history of the Moors from a first party perspective. Right? I can't remember the other brother that was on the show, but just go check it out. It's called Noble Drew Ali, and he was talking about when he was in the university, in the lecture hall, teachers talking about Moors for 2 minutes, put up his hand, sorry, I need to say something because, blah, 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 the history of the Moors extends 700 years, blah, blah. Teacher turned all different colors of the rainbow, stopped him, told him, I'll talk to you after class, just hold on a second. After class is done, right, the brother had class to go to, another class. Teacher told him, no, don't go to class. Hold on a second. Comes and tells him that if I talk to you about the full history of the Moors, they will kick me out of this university and take away my teacher's degree or whatever it is. This university professor is going to lose his position. University professor is going to lose his position as a university professor, right? If he mentions and speaks about the Moors in greater detail than what the university tells him, orders him, charges him to speak about the Moors. So, as far as academia is concerned, all these black leaders that we hold so high and mighty, they have a noose around their neck. It might not be attached to a tree yet, but let them talk about Moors and they're going to lynch those brothers and sisters, right? And if you're a Moor, if you are exercising nationality and birthrights, you can go and you can speak to them on that level and they'll tell you. Even Brother Abdullah Bey from Canaanland Moors, right? Moor in Canaanland that used to go to University of Toronto was breaking down to us that he had a teacher that used to always throw stuff at him because, he was Muslim. But being Muslim was blinding his mentality. And only until he got into Moorish knowledge that he started thinking back to all this stuff that his teacher is telling him about the Moors, and he's trying to denounce that he's not that to the teacher or the professor. And the professor is like schooling him about the Moors. And you don't want to hear it because, he's Muslim and Muhammad and the Quran and crap. BS. Right? When his professor was like bringing him into the office to do the one-on-one sit-down conversation whenever she's on lunch or whatever, talking about the Moors. Right? So it's very important that we face the facts. Whoever doesn't want to face the facts, that's their business, right? This is my position with Negro, black, colored people who don't want to accept all these, like I said, 400 videos out there that we have on YouTube. 400 videos we got on YouTube, right? And when I post something on Facebook, these dumb Negroes are going to talk about it's too long. They can't watch 2 hours to get the information that they're asking me the question about. They want me to tell them. Well, Nobuju Ali taught the Moors that man knows not by being told. So we're not telling you guys nothing no more. You're going to sit your ass down, humble yourself, and go watch the 2-hour video. That's just what you're going to do. We're not giving no handouts anymore. All the videos are titled. Punch in Canaanland Moors and everything will come up. Anything that you want to know about the Moors, there's a title attached to Canaanland Moors that's going to give you the answer. So y'all going to have to go start studying now, because we're not playing these we're not playing this game of show and tell anymore. Show and tell is over. There's 400 videos. Humble yourself and go study. If you don't want to study, then when we start telling you who you are, right, for not studying, you're niggers, right? And then people want to say, learn to love instead of hate, and don't call your brother a nigger. Those certain people aren't my brother and sister, right? Period. Because, I'm national. So I can't, just like every other nation that comes over here, right, and ignores Negro, black, colored people because you call yourself something that you're not. That's what we're going to start. Well, that's what I'm going to start doing. I'm going to start ignoring you niggers. Right? Now, never judge a book by its cover. The sister that, if I know that she probably gets it, right? I know that she gets it. She kind of looks European, right? But she's from Argentina. And she dropped some information on me today that we're going to share, right? And Sister's a L, right? Sister's a L from Argentina, right? But before we go into that, we're going to read an excerpt from U.S. Nigger Industry that you can get from rvbaypublications.com. Don't be shy. You know what I mean? Everybody intimidated because Taj has all this knowledge and, you know, I don't want to call the number, and send an email. Buy the books because they have extensive information on their website alone. We're not even going into the books part. We're just talking about punching rvbaypublications.com. Their information is extensive. And again, my approach is very biased because I don't get down with all these Moors out there because they have turbans and fezzes on. I get down with Moors who have the Prophet up front and the Moors who are active. If you're passive, if you're religious, Moor, like, you don't get my attention, right? And Islam to the Duke, Asir, and the Empress of 10,000 years for their Skype lecture again that they did with Canaanland, just to show that there's unity amongst the Moors. When people say, oh, we need unity, where's the unity amongst the Moors? Well, there's unity amongst active Moors. I don't know about dirty Moors and religious Moors and passive Moors, but as far as the active Moors are concerned, we have unity, right? So, we're going into the U.S. nigger industry, and everything that we're going to do from here is relative to what the sister sent today from Argentina. Page 17. A major part or feature of historical and archaeological interests as contained within the Darwinian theory adapts the position that the whole of the human species evolved from the troglodyte Negro. The scientific fact has long been established that the Negro is the troglodyte, or what is most commonly referred to as the black chimpanzee monkey. At this point, it must be explained to the reader that the Negro is not and does not scientifically refer to any member of the human species. Negro scientifically refers to the troglodyte nigger, which was long considered by modern man, i.e. European anthropologists, to be the only recognized primate monkey species. The troglodyte nigger primate is the closest of any of the anthropoids in their resemblance to man by skeletal structure and by the nature of the Negro's heightened level of intelligence. Thus, the world has been influenced to believe in or accept the Darwinian theory, which implies that man evolved from the troglodyte nigger primate. This is the modern informational source of the misconception of the thinking, which purports that the human family is allegedly the descendants of the anthropoid ape or the chimpanzee. The missing link. An interesting offshoot of the Darwinian theory is the long-lived interest about finding the so-called missing link. Some scientists are still searching. European anthropologists, biologists, archaeologists, and some other contemporary social philosophers have supported Darwin's theory. They still seek to solve the mystery-shrouded biological and evolutionary link, quote-unquote, between the anthropoid chimpanzee troglodyte monkey and the man, the human hominidae, Homo sapiens. Many European social scientists are allegedly looking for the primal monkey-to-man skeletal remains amongst old grave sites and anthropological digs. This traditionally accepted archaeological perspective and guesswork information mission serves to make or reveal the elusive and yet to be found evolutionary link between man and the chimpanzee troglodyte beast. This hypothetical link is key to the propagated literature and beliefs which imply confirmation of the blindly accepted Darwinian theory. Culture destroyers. If the Roman Crusaders, Inquisitionists, and particularly their descendant colonist invaders of North America had not been so insatiable in their passionate determinations to burn, to alter, and destroy ancient history books, ancient artifacts, scientific scripts and records, much knowledge could have been and would have been revealed to them concerning these speculative, pseudo-primal scientific man from troglodyte matters. Yet, the alien exploiters from Europe callously conspired to steal legacies, to cover up and to burn up ancient scientific records, and to suppress, alter, and destroy ancient Moabite Moorish history, ancient sciences, and the true evidence of many archaeological finds were and are in evidence all over the Americas, but were calculatedly ignored or deliberately misrepresented. Advanced sciences originating with the ancient ones, Moabites, who purposefully and inadvertently suppressed and covered up. European anthropologists and scientists, by omissions and deletions of records, thusly deny and hide from the world their own already documented biological and hybrid experimental origins. So if you have if you have an unabridged dictionary at home, you're going to look up troglodyte, right? And when you look up troglodyte, you're also going to look up hybrid. Okay? The amalgam experiments. The scientific facts are, according to the Moabite Moorish chronicles, that ancient man, human, did not evolve from the Negro Yavira Arabo, Negro Yavira Arabo, troglodyte, black chimpanzee monkey. Man was never monkey and monkey was never man. However, modern man, or a ruddy pale mankind species, was indeed the genetic result of an ancient Moabite scientist amalgam experiments that the Nation of Islam and all these people call Yaqub, which crossed or blended the bloods of the troglodyte nigger and the human zygote to uterus transfers and blood, etc. Enzymes from selected plant glands were also involved in the experiments, used to subdue the pungent strength of the oils given off from the sweat glands of the troglodyte. The Yaqubian amalgam experiments are the origin of modern man, derived from the original man. Thus, modern man is the amalgamated part of the blended human family called Albion, or red man. This red or ruddy man is contemporarily called Romans or Europeans. The less informed call them white men or paleface. This amalgamation factor is the primal reason as to why Europeans and their direct descendants are correctly referred to as modern man, Occidentum, OCCIDENTEM, versus ancient man, Orientum, ORIENTEM. The mathematical and multi-nominal scientific technologies used for these ancient biological experiments were perfected to a quantic degree, whereas production, though weaker than the original man, was definitively possible and duplicitous. The other remaining problem, unique to the Albo hybrida, ALBO-HYBRIDA, was melanoma/leprosy. There need to be no mystery about the so-called missing link. Emphasis. The missing link is a deliberate deletion of some of the world history and the Inquisitionist suppression of a true knowledge about human history, about evolution, and about the highly advanced ancient sciences. Albion/Angla land. ENGLA land. With regard to Angleland, if you go on YouTube and you search Canaanland Moors IHF throwback, that was, IHF is a hip-hop group that me and my brethren Simon Phoenix had back in the day, and we used to put out mix CDs, right? The intro to this mix CD is a lecture by William Mackey, and in the lecture to William Mackey, he's talking about how the Europeans used to sell each other into slavery because there was a higher level of European and then there was a lower level European, and the lower level Europeans just used to get sold, right? If you go online and you even put in Angleland William Mackey, the audio lecture might come up, or if you do it on YouTube, the YouTube might come up with William Mackey, right? Powerful elder, right? Historian. So Albion, Angleland. Albion is the island, like continent, where the ancient Moabites placed a predominance of the Albo hybrida males of the new ruddy modern man, expanded android species. Another downside effect of the amalgam experiments, aside from the intensive education and socialization, was the sudden onset of the diseases known as gonorrhea, tuberculosis, and syphilis. Right? Keep in mind Tuskegee Airmen and why they were taking their personal diseases and injecting them into ancient man. Right? Payback. Payback is a social separation soon became a necessity. No immediate cure was found for these diseases. Research and work needed to be done. Thus, the decision was made to gather together the Albo mankind and move the majority of them to Albion. The cooler climatic weather conditions common to the Albion's territorial weather was more compatible with the acute sensitivities evidence of the Albo hybrida pinkish skin complexion. The Albo were highly prone to painful skin burnings, actuated by minimal exposure to the sun's rays. Minimal exposure. And we see that going on today. Equatorial Earth locations were apparently taking a high toll on the life expectancy of the modern man. Unfortunately, molecular mutations or skin cancers proved to be problematic on a large scale, similar to what's going on today. And so Albion's semi-isolated geographical location, bordered by the waters of the Atlantic and the North Sea, was a more compatible geographical placement for the Albo, or lepers as they were sometimes called. Now we know about who the lepers were in the scriptures. Albion is also anciently and astrologically referred to as Patmos, Patmos, although there is another island near Turkey which now bears that name. Albion relates to Albus or albino, thus the ancient name as the given land which the Moabites assented to the Albion kind of man to populate and dwell upon. Many of the Albo were slow to adjust to sophisticated civilization and orderly so-called social government. Many of the Albo preferred to live in caves. Albion, thusly, is the original and ancient name of Angleland, which means land of the Angles. The land of the Angles is now called England. The troglodyte nigger, negro, black are parent to the Albo hybrida Angloman and are essentially one and the same. The Angloman is but a genetically generated heterogeneous hybrid. Thus, scientifically and in truth, the Negro and black refers factually to the caveman and the descendants of the caveman. People should not be socially sensitive about discussing the true origin of the Negro, troglodyte, or the proper primal use of the word. All natural people should be scientifically educated and made aware of the Negro experimental hybrid subject matter, which has caused so much unnecessary misery and consternation. A little knowledge about the workings of nature and of hidden ancient history should alleviate many of the social misunderstandings which have evolved with the social misplacements of the words nigger, negro, black, which have marked and corrupted North American and Western Hemisphere society. The scientific and etymological exposure of the truth about the real Negro is not presented to cause discomfort to or to debase or condemn Europeans, but only to intelligently remove the ignorance about the Negro caused by way of Europeans' mean-spirited perpetration of the word's misplacement, the twisting and altering of true history by European slaveholders and the occupational U.S. corporations also exposes one of their political motives behind forced reconstructed history and massive book burnings. Therefore, the Europeans who imposed the nigger brands have traded places. Remember Eddie Murphy movie, Trading Places? Socially and politically with the true aboriginal and sovereign natural people. Europeans have created through mental conditioning and color an artificial 14th Amendment person or corporate Negro. The natural people, by way of ignorantly accepting, using, and adopting the nigger brand names from a pseudo-identity perspective, have been falsely led to believe that they were the descendants of niggers or troglodytes. Negro Yavera Arabo and the troglodyte nigger are two of the ancient and original names given to the black chimpanzee monkey primate by the ancient Moabite peoples of Southwest Amexem, South Africa, South America. The Negroes, troglodytes, anthropoids proliferated the Southlands past and present and can be found abundantly around the Amazon River Valley of Southwest Africa, America, and the surrounding areas. Further note must be taken also of the geographical location of the Negro River, Rio Negro, or Black River, which was named so by the ancient Moabites because it contains black water. Rio Negro merges into the Amazon River, Rio Amazonas, near Manaus at Brazil, Southwest Amexem, Southwest Africa, South America. So what you're going to do is, oh yeah, and don't forget that was U.S. Nigger Industry by Grand Chief Taj Tariq Bey. Right? Amir Taj Tariq Bey. Now what you're going to do is you're going to go on YouTube and you're going to research a Bobby Hemmett lecture called Human Artificial, right? And that's going to give you a breakdown from Kemet of what we just read in nigger industry, right? To prove that it's not, just some made up thing that we're just coming up with, and we don't have to play the NOI, Yakub game, and just say that this mad scientist created these species of people, right? And again, let me read this part again, right? Just to make the point stick. The scientific and etymological exposure of the truth about the real Negro is not presented to cause discomfort to or to debase or condemn Europeans, but only to intelligently remove the ignorance about the Negro caused by way of the Europeans' mean-spirited perpetration of the world's misplacement. Right? So these same people who are the Negro, because like brother Tallahassee has been doing for the past little while, pushing hard the definition of black, so people know that it means pale, right? So we can get it in our mind, so it can stick in our mind that we're not the black people, because black means pale, right? So when they say whiteboard, that's the real blackboard, right? The whiteboard's the blackboard, right? Chalk is black. Chalk is not white. Chalk is black. Okay? That's the stick in our mind, that the Negro is not us. And when we have all these black leaders pushing this ideal that we are the Negro, and that we are the black people, and that we are the quote-unquote it, you just, like we were talking about on Sunday, abandon your birthright to be a it. Because black and Negro and colored are its. Those aren't beings attached to the human family. Those are its. And its is no different than chair, lamp, laptop, bottle of juice, cup, whatever. It. This is why the KKK was going so hard against their own for trying to bring an it into civilized society and make it have rights. Because if Negro, black, colored could have rights, then that means chair should have rights, bottle of juice should have rights, cup should have rights, and everything else that's it should have rights. But logically, those things don't have rights because they're its. Rights don't apply to its. Right? Citizenry and things of that nature cannot apply to its. So the Klan's position was actually correct. Because what do if you hang this bottle from a tree, is if you want to be Negro, cool, but know that you're gonna hang from a tree. It's not a human rights violation. That's why they could continue doing that, right? That's why they did the switcheroo. They did the switcheroo so they can legally and lawfully have the power, right? They did the switcheroo so they can legally and lawfully have the power to abuse you even when you're right. Even when you are taking the position of being a responsible citizen and upholding your law enforcement oath of ethics, right? If you attach these slave labels to yourself, you will be a victim. Even if you're right, you're going to be a victim. Learn from Brother Moorhead. They're putting it out there to let you know, don't claim to be these things, even though it's them that's putting this on them, right? Because his name is Moorhead. And it's funny that it's a guy that's named Moorhead is the one that made it in the news. Of all the brothers out there, it had to be this brother with the name Moorhead, right? So if nigger industry wasn't enough, right? Now we're going to go to the nigger problem. Sociological misprision. And this one is Moore's Order of the Round Table, right? By Grand Sheikh Taj Tariq Bey and Sheikhess Duria Bey. We're going to go to page 10. Abandonment of old Amexem laboratories and cities. A dire state of emergency arose in Central Amexem Africa due to the unforeseen consequences stemming from the Ibrida-oriented disease epidemics and other associated problems. Something drastic had to be done, and quickly. Many of the surrounding people were distraught and demanded that all Ibrida experiments be abandoned and that the scientific laboratory complexes and universities be destroyed. Others wanted the heads of the scientists who were most directly involved with the Albo Ibrida strain aspects of the bioorganic experiments. Riots abounded. Many Ibrida killed or injured humans, and others were killed by some of the frightened and confused mobs who saw the Ibrida as pale, grotesque monsters of horror and disgust. In a place where peace was once common, misery, intolerance, and killings fouled the air. The local regencies were forced to close the ancient laboratories and scientific complexes. The news spread quickly. Even many of the ancient pyramid temples and universities of higher learning were ransacked. In a word, the peace of society was totally disrupted by the introduction of these strange pale humanoids. Another problem was that many Ibrida would not bathe. And if you, to verify that, you're gonna do your research on a book called Dirt. Can't remember who the author is, but Dirt talks about Europe and how they basically lived in filth in Europe during the Dark Ages. Filth. Bathing 4 times a day. In order to get fleas off their body, they wore fur coats. They would urinate and defecate out the window on people below them. And the people below them that were getting urinated and defecated on, it was no thing because that was just natural, right? Other scientists from Northwest Amexem Africa were also critical of the Negro aspects of ovum and blood crossing with human eggs and sperm. Negroes were exported far and wide. This certainly did not bode well for the Yucatan scientists of the Midlands. Their quest to calm the people and be allowed time to research and address the unforeseen disease, pandemic, etc., fell on deaf ears. With the ancient laboratory complexes sacked, destroyed, or burned, the Paleolithic issue became the scourge of Yucatan and Mexico. Many cities were out and out, shut down and abandoned, left to rot and decay as nature would have it. Among many, even the mention of the ancient experiments was taboo. Excuse me. Among many, even the mention of the ancient experiment was taboo. Other aboriginals who had cohabited with the Negro Paleo were scorned and summarily cast as inferior and as beasts or animals, even though they did not show any direct relation to the hybrida nature, other than a lighter complexion and somewhat more flaxen hair. And so it came to be that almost nobody would accept or openly be seen with the Negroes. Right? This is the same situation that we have with during the slave trade. That the Negro was a beast, right? That was only able to be, right? Everything's karma, right? This is why Noble Drew Ali came. Because everybody's debts were paid for. Karma had dealt a blow to everybody involved in the madness. And it was time to put all these things aside, because remember, the only reason that they got 13 colonies and all that was for the same reason, right? To end this silly beef that Asiatics and Europeans had, right? So we said, okay, fine, we're gonna help create a constitution for you so you can be civilized, because even back then they knew who the Negro was. Others would mock the Albo hybrid, calling them names like Paleface and Red Dogs, etc. On the other hand, others were far more sympathetic, having created bonds or relationships. After all, our scientists initiated the experiments and carried them to fruition. We made them. Their Negro problems were and are our problems. Which goes back again to Noble Drew Ali making the statement that the Negro problem is our problem. And the only way that the Negro problem can be fixed is through connection to the Moorish Divine and National Movement. In short order, decisions were made to do all that was possible to address the Negro skin problem and to cure the diseases. The Paleo needed protection from the unforgiving among the natural people, yet to a more serious degree from the equatorial sun, which appeared to angrily cause lesions and cancers among the Paleo at an alarming rate. A more compatible environment was in order. Angolan weather patterns are unpredictable and changeable, and in that most of the time the temperatures in that area are more milder than on the main continent. Winter temperatures rarely drop below 32 degrees. Therefore, freezing is uncommon, right? And remember, 32 degrees of masonry, 33 degrees begins to thaw out. That's why majority of high-level masons are known to be 33, because they're getting into the warmer temperature, whereas 33 and lower are the inepts and the ones who are still rock in their mentality or still frozen in their mentality, right? Winter temperatures rarely drop below 32 degrees. Therefore, freezing is uncommon. Summers are generally mild and rarely rise above 90 degrees. Comes back again to masonry and the 90 degrees, right? And that we're 360 degrees. And 360 degrees is a circle, which is the geometric representation of the equatorial sun, right? Under these conditions, the Albo Paleo would have a better chance at surviving the sun's fury and could evolve to a higher state of civilized culture over time. On these accounts, distance and weather, Canaanland was chosen as a compatible place for the Paleo. Also beneficial to the albino tribal cause was the British Isles' foggy, wet, and cloudy weather conditions. This would prove to be a more compatible climate atmosphere for their sensitive, pale, or albo skin. At the same time, while addressing the biological issue, the transfer resolved on a limited basis some of the inter-socialization problems centered in areas today known as Chichenza, Uxmal, Mayapan, Tiyum, and surrounding areas and cities of the Yucatan. So you can research CHICHENITZA, UXMAL, MAYAPAN, and TUIUM. Similar problems were inflicted upon the natural peoples in the southwest Amexem Africa regions of Patagonia and the surrounding islands. The destructive disease epidemics and the social disorder needed to be checked in a timely and reasonable order. The hidden and suppressed history of Central and Southwest Amexem Africa involving the heterogeneous hybrida experiments were decreed taboo, and the Yucatan legacy became a secret sorrow. The ensuing Albo Paleo problems have caused humanity untold miseries, being the root of the ancient traditions of rejection, segregation, and hatred of the troglodyte nigger Paleolith. Thus, the traditional advent of questionable customs that we suffer from in these days, with the practices of rejecting Negroes and denying Negroes more intricate authoritative powers in society. Due to future Inquisition conquests, the roles of the true Moabite Moorish sovereigns and that of their self-created hybrids have been reversed. As time passed, the once sovereign Moabites Moors were colorably branded as the Negro niggers, and the real Paleo Negroes in rebellion took on for themselves the high social caste title of white people. White relates to in terms of jurisprudence and law. So when the Moors make the claim of we're the white man, and you hear Moors say white power to each other, it's in terms of jurisprudence and law, because white is a sovereign power status over the land. The stolen legal status must not be confused with the practiced misconceptions propagated about an albo or pale skin complexion. The wiser among us will not fail to take into account the annals of ancient world history when studying or analyzing anthropology and the sociology of today. A failure to do so can and will cause misjudgments, hatred, confusion, and misunderstood issues about nations and peoples, thus a lack of true knowledge of the human condition. And again, that was from the book called The Nigger Problem, that you can get on rvbaypublications.com. All right. May 2008 by Alfonso Daniels. So we were talking about ultimately the switch, right? Because we don't read, because we don't study, we don't know what the facts are. So with us not being able to know the facts, people can change things around and have us believe what they want us to believe, opposed to us, doing like Noble Drew Ali taught and being what we know, right? So we're going to go into these articles. We're going to be going into these articles with regard to how come, because how these articles came about is that, when I found out that the sister was from Argentina, right, I started asking her about, there must be Moors there. You're talking about Argentina, you're talking about Southwest of Mexico, there must be Moors there. No Moors are over there. Moors that are over there are in a very small number, right? And majority of the people in Argentina today are of closer to European stock, right? And the reason why we read The Nigger Problem and the Nigger Industry was so that we can see, right, again, coming back to the changing of the guard, and that regardless of what was done to these people called Albion, they even know that their history isn't in Europe. Because if you go to Europe, there's only Moors heads in Europe representing all the European names in Europe. And that's why we read about the Russians, the Black Russians, so we can know that Europe isn't their place. Their place is Argentina, because that's where the experiments took place, that they, in their DNA, they know that Argentina laboratories are their home. Not the land, but that's the place that is in their DNA, that's familiar to them. That's why so many Europeans go to South America when they go vacation or whatever, right? So this is by Alfonso Daniels. We're not going to read it. Well, I don't know. We'll see how much we get through, right? More than 30,000 Argentine citizens died in the military junta's quote-unquote dirty war. Now, one of its 400 torture camps is to be public memorial to be disappeared. But as far-right groups intimidate those prepared to speak up, it seems the war of silence is not over. Last October, Hector Febres, I don't know if I pronounced that right, A stocky, or Febres, a stocky 66-year-old former Coast Guard officer, dressed in an elegant light green suit, entered a windowless Buenos Aires court for the first time. He was accused of torturing prisoners and being responsible for the abduction of hundreds of newborn babies from mothers who later disappeared during the military dictatorship in Argentina 30 years ago. Nicknamed Savage for his vicious methods, Febres was on the verge of denouncing colleagues behind the military junta's 7-year dirty war, 1976 to 1983. But on December 10th, 4 days before the verdict was to be given, he was found dead in his cell, poisoned with cyanide. He had promised to speak out at his sentencing and his murder, according to Judge Sandra Arroyo, who was appointed to oversee the investigation into his death, achieved its objective to silence him. We'll just call him Hector, because I don't know how to pronounce that last name. So Hector's death is a vivid reminder that elements linked to the past repression are still alive and well in Argentina. Human rights associations blame these right-wing factions for the arrest, torture, and death of 30,000 people, mostly trade union and student activists, including at least 6 British citizens, under the pretext of getting rid of communist sympathizers. It sounds like King Alfred plan. Their influence has been blamed for the fact that only a handful of actions against the perpetrators have reached the courts, despite the decision in 2003 by then President Nestor Kirchner to annul amnesty laws passed in the 1980s by the newly restored democracy. Hector was the first person to be tried for crimes committed in the Navy Mechanical School, the largest of nearly 400 detention and torture camps that operated in Argentina, where almost 5,000 people died. It is a beautiful complex of colonnaded, whitewashed buildings with red tiled roofs, surrounded by trees, located along Avenida Libertad, Liberty Avenue, in Buenos Aires, past the capital's elegant racecourse and parks reminiscent of London or Paris. It is timely then that ESMA, the Navy Mechanical School, opened its doors to the public at the end of last month in defiance of the oppressors and in memory of the victims. It is now Latin America's largest human rights museum and will follow the example, many hope, of the Holocaust Museum in Berlin. The human rights group Mothers of the Plaza de Mayo has converted a building next to the 4 barracks of the 17-hectare, 34-building complex where detainees lived and worked into a cultural center. Another building will house the National Memory Archives. The consortium created to oversee the creation of the museum, which is expected to be completed in 2010 for Argentina's 200th anniversary of independence, will decide on the rest. It has to be a living museum so the future generations don't commit the same mistakes, says Miriam Lewin, 49, one of the 150 ESMA survivors, a student activist of the Montoneros, a Marxist offshoot of the Peronist movement that led a guerrilla struggle against the government. She was arrested and taken there in March 1978. She had previously spent nearly a year at another detention center where she had been locked in a tiny dark cell, kept hooded and chained to the wall and tortured with electric shocks. At one point she thought she was going to be released. I was told that they were taking me to a work camp to become rehabilitated, she says in a matter of fact tone while sipping coffee in Buenos Aires cafe, and that then I would be free. They shoved her into the boot of a car to take her to Esma, but a British journalist was visiting. They had to temporarily evacuate all detainees to another place to cover the evidence. She subsequently spent 10 months at Esma. On her release, she fled to the United States, returning to Argentina to work as a journalist for a local television station once democracy was restored. You know, democracy is a fraud, right? Once republic was restored. Lewin continues, it was similar to the Terezin Nazi camp. Some prisoners worked and were shown films for entertainment, while others were tortured next door, then drugged and waited before being taken to death flights over the Atlantic. The bodies were dropped into the ocean. Others were burnt. As in the case of the Holocaust victims who were forced to write to their families saying that they were being treated well, Esma prisoners were occasionally allowed contact with the outside world, mostly through calls from a monitored telephone booth in the entrance, which is now a lavatory. When I was 20, they took me to see my parents, Lewin said, to prevent them from looking for me. My mother asked, "How are you? How are you being treated?" "Fine." "What do you do all day?" "Well, we write, watch films, read." "Are you with other girls of your age?" Yes, Mom." I couldn't tell her that I was in a concentration camp where they tortured and killed people, that this could be the last time she would see me alive, otherwise they would have been in danger too. Dressed in a loose light blue shirt, Lewin speaks in a tired voice. She is part of a family of Jewish immigrants who arrived in the country in the 1920s from Poland. She explains how, despite having since married, her husband is also a torture victim, and having 2 children, her past still haunts her. "I will never forget how purely they humiliate us. They took me and some other female prisoners to have dinner in a restaurant in the center of town with a group of armed plainclothes officers. We would be sleeping in the middle of the night and a guard would shake us and say, 'Wake up, you have to go.' We didn't know if we were going out for a meal or to die. A girlfriend of mine was taken dancing by the guy who had killed her husband 2 weeks earlier," she says with a weary smile. Like most others, she was imprisoned in the casino or officers' hall of residence, a building clearly visible from the street and overlooked by nearby flats. She was forced to work in the basement, translating into Spanish articles on the military regime that appeared in English and French newspapers. Others wrote military biographies, forged documents, and filmed propaganda videos. As they worked, inmates in the adjacent rooms were tortured with water and electric cattle prods, their shouts sometimes muffled by loud music. Famously, 2 French nuns who backed the mother's struggle to find their vanished children and who were kidnapped and later murdered by the military were photographed in front of a Montoneros banner in one of the rooms in the basement at Esma. The picture was then published in the right-wing newspaper La Nación to try to blame Montoneros for their disappearance. The case made international headlines, pushing France to seek justice against those involved in their abduction and murder. Another torture victim, Patrick Rice, 62, an Irish priest considered a subversive because of his work in a slum, recalls how one of the nuns, Sister Alice Doman, was kidnapped. It was a Saturday, and there were a lot of people around. And when they left the church, there were cars parked here. He points to the street in front of the entrance. And Alfredo Astiz, a handsome former captain and intelligence officer in the Navy based at Esma, known as the Blonde Angel of Death, later briefly arrested by the British during the Falklands War. Make sure you Google the Falklands War. Who had infiltrated the group, pretended to be a relative of a disappeared, came and marked several of them by greeting them with a kiss. It was almost biblical. Then they were shoved into cars and taken away. We are standing in front of a Gothic-style Holy Cross church in Buenos Aires, founded by the Irish Passionist order in the 19th century. The Mothers of the Plaza de Mayo chose this church in 1977, soon after first assembling in public in April of that year. They would meet in a room behind the altar to gather funds to pay for advertisements in a national paper listing the names of disappeared, since the mainstream media ignored them. Today, one of the French sisters, Leonie Duquette, is buried in a nearby garden. The body of another, Alice Damon, is still missing. The basement at ESMA is now an empty shell. Lit by faint light bulbs, the eerie silence is broken only by the sound of secondary school children playing in a nearby field. The school was there before. The military simply hid the building from view using a large green canvas. The first reports from relatives of the disappeared were made only a few months after the military coup in March 1976. At the end of that year, a prisoner managed to escape from ESNA, and the building went through a series of renovations as oppressors battled to confound inspectors from the Organization of American States, OAS, who arrived in 1979 following further reports by witnesses. But most believe these disappearances were the work of extremists of the right and left, unconnected with the security forces. The few surviving detainees who managed to slip accounts to the outside world had been spoken of a lift and had been taken directly to the back of the building, the only details they could provide because they were kept hooded the whole time. To trick the inspectors, the military removed the lift and built a small extension at the rear, but they forgot to move the mosquito nets from what were now internal windows. The inspectors missed these clues, which were not picked up until years later. Skip forward a little. ESMA was finally vacated by the military last year. In October, soldiers nailed a shooting target to the front door of one of the buildings and then systematically wrecked the place. As I toured its ghostly tree-lined streets, signs of this destruction are everywhere still. Ripped floors, flooded basements, and destroyed bathrooms, with only the sound of water dripping from broken pipes coming from inside. This havoc has dashed hopes of the entire ESMA complex. Apart from the two buildings that have just opened, will be accessible to the public in the near future. More worryingly, however, is the fear that the newly elected Buenos Aires City Administration under the right-wing mayor Mauricio Macri will delay or even block any initiative. He defends the conservative right and church's establishment's so-called two demons vision, which considers that the repressive military and extreme left groups are equally responsible for the crimes committed at the time, and that since neither of the two exists anymore, one should forget about the history. In the face of this powerful challenge, the future of ESMA will largely depend on the former First Lady and Senator Cristina Fernández de Kirchner, who recently took over her husband's job as Argentina's president and has committed herself to seeing all trials against oppressors completed by the end of her 4-year term in December 2011. She will be aided by relentless struggle of the survivors and the relatives of the dead. And that again is an article by Alfonso Daniels from 17th of May 2008. So do research on him. Right? Now in that article they mention Nazis, and this one. Did Hitler live to old age here in Argentina? Sun investigates mountain haven for Nazi war criminals. Standing amid the sunflowers beside his log chalet in the Argentina mountains, George Prebke, P-R-I-E, or Jorge, whatever, J-O-R-G-E, last name P-R-I-E-B-K-E, happily reminisces about the Third Reich's most evil men. Pointing to the next street, the old man revealed in a heavy German accent, "That's the Hotel Campana, where Dr. Mengele stayed for a time. Eichmann passed through here too. I worked with him for a year at the Mercedes-Benz factory up in Buenos Aires, but never met him here in Bariloche. He was very quiet." The men so casually dropped in the conversation by Prebke are Auschwitz concentration camps grotesque angel of death Dr. Josef Mengele and Adolf Eichmann, coldly efficient architect of the Holocaust. Gray-haired Prebke's Heidi-style cabin, surrounded by the snow-tipped Andes, is in the Bavarian-style ski resort of San Carlos de Bariloche, some 600 miles south of the Argentine capital, Buenos Aires. Built by German immigrants in the late 19th century, today Bariloche's fondue restaurants and lonely mountain trails are a haven for backpackers and hikers from all over the globe. Yet, in the years after the Second World War, this charming mountain getaway gained infamy as a haven for freeing Nazi war criminals. Keep in mind with what we're talking about here. Keep in mind Operation Paperclip. Right? Google Operation Paperclip, so you can get a gist of the Nazis and U.S. relations. Because don't forget, it was the U.S. that funded Hitler with stuff. Sensational claims have recently resurfaced that Nazi Führer, F-U-H-R-E-R, Adolf Hitler escaped his fate in Berlin bunker and lived out his old age here in the wilds of Patagonia. Controversial book Grey Wolf, The Escape of Adolf Hitler by British authors Gerard Williams and Simon Dunstan, published in October, describes how Hitler and wife Eva Braun even had two daughters who were still alive around a decade ago. They insist Hitler and Braun escaped the bunker in a secret tunnel and were replaced by doubles who committed suicide. They then claim it was the burned bodies of these doubles that were discovered by the avenging Red Army. In what authors call the greatest sleight of hand in history, Hitler and Braun then escaped to Argentina in a submarine before setting up home in a remote hideaway close to Bariloche. Here so the theory goes. The tormented Führer spent his time plotting the emergence of a Fourth Reich before dying at 73 in 1962, his remains cremated and scattered. Hitler here in Bariloche, Jorge 71, a pizza restaurant handyman mused. It's possible, but I never heard anything about Hitler being here when I was growing up. Papa never spoke about him or the war. The man Jorge calls Papa is as likely as anyone to have known if Führer lived out his dotage in South America, for Papa is Papa is Erich Prebke, captain in the Waffen SS. He would certainly have recognized Hitler, even with his appearance altered. Papa was a language expert and translated for Hitler 3 times when he met Mussolini. Still alive, age 98, says Jorge in good health, Prebke Sr. was extradited from Argentina to Italy in 1995 to stand trial for his role in the massacre of 335 civilians in Nazi-occupied Rome. Now under house arrest in the Italian capital, he insists he was following Hitler's direct orders. Prebke, who today proudly displays a photograph of himself wearing an SS Death's Head Cap badge on his own website, had escaped to fascist sympathizing Argentina from the ashes of the Third Reich using the escape route dubbed rat lines. The mountains around Bariloche, so like the Bavarian Alps, beloved by the Nazi hierarchy, were a home from home for a Nazi on the run in the late 40s. The secluded little town had long had Nazi sympathizers in its midst. Sepia-tinted photographs from the 30s show locals gathered around a picture of the Führer and proudly flying the swastika. The rat lines turned to ski resorts. The rat lines turned these ski resorts into something of a mini Reich. There was Joseph Schwamberger, commander of the 3 Nazi labor camps and in charge of the liquidation of the Jewish ghetto in Przemysl, Poland, Przemysl, Poland. Also, there was a Nazi diplomat, Horst Wagner, a man with the blood of at least 350,000 Jews on his hand, who used the rat lines to reach Bariloche in the 50s. The membership list of the Mountaineering Association Club Adino Bariloche from the late 40s include Hans Ulrich Rudel, former hero of the Luftwaffe and close confidant of Hitler, and Friedrich Lanchner, the former Nazi governor of Tyrol. Fly ahead a little bit. So could Bariloche's holidaymakers be walking among the descendants of Hitler? Hitler in Patagonia? Ernesto smiles. It's completely ridiculous. But local historian Abel Basti, who has written a guidebook telling tourists where to find homes of the former Third Reich men, is convinced Bariloche provided a bolt hole for Hitler. He has written a series of books on the subjects. At his home in Bariloche, Battisti 56 shows me documents, declassified files, and witness testimonies that he believes are evidence of Hitler's presence in South America. He insists a witness he spoke to had received a menacing phone call warning the Gestapo are still active, so keep quiet. Battisti added, I don't think the old Gestapo secret police still exists, but there are right-wing groups who identify with their ideals. What about hard scientific evidence? As yet, Battisti has produced no DNA samples from possible Hitler or Braun grave sites and no living Argentine relative. At his suggestion, Sun photographer Scott Hornby and I visited an isolated Bavarian-style rambling mansion on the banks of the slate-gray Nahuel Huapi Lake, which he claims was from a time Hitler and Braun's hideaway. Hidden by thick woodland in Alco, 53 miles north of Bariloche near the village of Villa La Angostura, is certainly eerie enough. Approaching the guest houses and barns of the complex down a rutty mud track, we were stopped by a bolted gate with a sign warning private property. Chilean dad of one Esteban Berriosa, 61, who has lived in the outbuildings for 3 years, invited us in to take pictures. We stared through the windows of one of the guest houses. Esteban said, "You won't see any swastikas in there. I don't know if Hitler lived there, but I get 2 or 3 people every day coming to ask about him." He said the complex was for sale and warned we needed permission to go into the main house. Last night, TV journalist Gerard 52 said in a docudrama on Grey Wolf will be released this year, and Hollywood has shown interest in a movie. The author said a deal was soon between US intelligence, big business, and the Nazis to let Hitler and Braun get out of the bunker and disappear. The evidence is compelling. Experts have been quick to debunk the notion that Hitler plotted a rebirth of his master race fantasies in Patagonia, which would make a lot of sense based on the initial amalgam experiments taking place in Patagonia. Sergio Wilder, 43, Latin America dictator of Nazi hunters. The Simon Wiesenthal Center last night insisted Argentina was the main haven for Nazi war criminals. Men like Mengele and Eichmann were protected by the Argentine state. But there is no serious evidence Hitler survived the war, let alone came to Argentina. These stories should be for novels, not history. Although the historian Guy Walters, who wrote Hunting Evil on the escape of Nazi war criminals, last year labeled the Hitler in Barcelo's theory as the worst sort of junk history. Eyewitnesses testified to Hitler dying in the bunker. In 2009, I interviewed Rochus Misch, Hitler's personal bodyguard, who was in the fortification with Hitler as the Russians closed in. He told me on April 30th, 1945, Hitler left his final followers and entered a private room with Braun. Miss said they waited around 45 minutes for the shot. Russia said, "I saw Hitler slumped by the table. I did not see any blood on his head, and I saw Eva lying next to him on the sofa with her knees drawn up. Hitler was taken outside to be burnt. It was over." Back in Bariloche, Prebke says local Nazis would toast Hitler's birthday at a local inn well into the 1960s. He said they would drink themselves under the table. I think patriots still celebrate his birthday in other parts of the country, but not here. A large swastika with a line drawn through its center has been spray painted on the wall not far from the Prebke family home. The message is clear: no Nazis. Local mom of 3, Catherine Cannon, 54, insisted Bariloche is not swarming with Nazis. It's a modern holiday resort now. Those times are long gone. 4 more who fled to South America. Around 300 Nazis fled to Argentina, including notorious war criminals. Angel of Death Joseph Mengele, who experimented on victims at Auschwitz, escaped there in 1949. He died in 1979. Adolf Eichmann transported Jews to death camps. He was caught in Buenos Aires and hanged in 1962. Butcher of Lion Claws Barbie fled to Argentina. He died in prison in 1991. Concentration camp commandant Dinko Sakic ran a textile factory in the country. He died in 2008. So that was just to put some stuff out there, because the Moors deal with putting out the facts. And the fact that there's this information out there, the fact that this came from somebody who's from Argentina, right? We're not even gonna say that it's not true or it's true or whatever. It was presented. There was many names in there. You can do your own research. There was many books listed in there. You could get those books and see what it is for yourself. All right. Now, more recently, Wednesday, September 19, 2012, UN calls on Argentina to stop eviction of indigenous peoples from their lands. United Nations Special Rapporteur on Indigenous Peoples, James Anaya, called on Argentina to cease the eviction of indigenous communities from their lands during the presentation of the annual report of his office before the UN Human Rights Council in Geneva. The usurpation of indigenous lands is common practice, argues Special Rapporteur on Indigenous Peoples James Anaya. The report requests the suspension of all process and administrative actions to evict indigenous communities from their lands until a full technical, juridical, procedural survey of lands occupied by the indigenous peoples is completed. The grave legal insecurity in indigenous lands has been reflected in the high number of indigenous communities evictions, points out the report, elaborated on data collected by Anaya during a mission to Argentina in 2011. Anaya and his staff, besides Buenos Aires City, visited 10 of the 23 provinces and completed 170 testimonies. The Argentine delegation replied that under the current emergency law, evictions from these lands has been suspended until the 23rd of November 2013, but admitted that after verifying the absence of the requirements demanded, there have been evictions. Argentina's Ombudsman's office supported the report, saying he continues to receive claims from members of the Mapuche community, Lof Piachil, Ontario, in the province of Neuquén, the Quom people, QOM people of Formosa, the Omagua people, OMAGUACA, and the Wichi from Salta. They all claim that the emergency law is not being compiled. The head of the Argentine NGO Human Rights Standing Assembly, Rodrigo Gomez Tortosa, has been quoted saying that the emergency law has a very low degree of compliance, and accused the authorities from the northern province of Formosa for the threats and aggravations suffered by the indigenous leader from the Quom community, Felix Diaz, who is in litigation over the usurpation of land by provincial officials. According to official data, the indigenous population totals 600,000, which is equivalent to 1.7% of the 42 million Argentines, although other sources mentioned by Anaya estimate the number closer to 2 million, made up of 30 autochthonous peoples settled mainly to the north and south of the country. The problems of Argentina's indigenous stems from the historic depossession of vast tracts of their lands by ranchers and the big farming, oil, and mining corporations which operate in the lands claimed by these communities, which lack a legal acknowledgement of their lands according to the forms of use and occupation, concludes the report presented by Anaya. So it's clear and obvious that all indigenous peoples need to take into consideration Noble Drew Ali and what he presented to the Moors of North, South, and Central America. And to close out, we're going to read a couple sections from another book by the master teacher, Addressing Misunderstandings of Purpose Concerning Chief Sharif Abdul Ali, Noble Drew Ali, the Moorish Divine and National Movement. Right? And this is another book by Brother Taj Tariq Bey. And we're going to read The first section, called Name, Nationality, and True Identity, are primal keys. Conscious and active Moorish Americans are addressing issues of true national identity in many diverse social and political forums. They are becoming more cognizant of the aspects of its legal and historically related ramifications. Moors are also analyzing status and obligatory identity concepts and relative documents as presented in North American society. Such candid and non-status quo scholarship definitely demands a more learned change in the present mental state of affairs that now confronts and marks the natural people. We must aspire to a higher level of thinking that is qualitative, far above than that of the mediocre status quo standards set by the occupational and usurping European colonists and their descendants. The reality of the situation presents us with the need to go back to those high and all-inclusive philology patterns that were formal fare for our Moabite Moorish foremothers and forefathers. Institutionalized distortion of linguistics by way of connotation invoking practices and morphing to project misdirection and the deviant reconstruction of history are germane to their well-propagated colonial miseducation strategies. All of this social and political din has roots and origins in and from the dictates of the Romans' Inquisition against the Moors. This highly destructive and multifaceted war is not only long-standing but also sets the social spirit of operations for European colonial human trafficking practices, their forced servitude and black code systems, their escheating and land theft activities, and their sadistic torture techniques used to impose their religion on Aboriginal peoples, etc. The Moorish Divine and National Movement, in stark contrast to these commonly experienced Inquisition policies, is venerably a modern-day redemption order promoting social, spiritual, economic, and political reformation corrections. It was founded for humanitarian, redemptive purposes and for presenting knowledge, justice, and restorative remedies. In its most modest form, it is a monumentous counter to Inquisitionist activity. The humanitarian and Rotarian character of the movement has proven very progressive and leaves strong reflections of its motivating humanitarian and ethical government cause. These precepts become immediately apparent when an expanded analysis and study of the Moorish nationality card of identification is animated. For such a study into the construction of these declaratory mediums leads one to bring into open many anthropological, historical, philosophical, linguistic, and social political truths, many of them unexpected. Secondly, we'll go to who was Noble Drew Ali, page 34. Noble Drew Ali, a Moor, descendant of the ancient Moabites, was born in North Carolina Territory, Northwest Africa, North America, in the year 1886, 1306 Moorish calendar. He was raised with the Cherokee tribe of the Moorish nation and was named Timothy Drew. At a very young age, Timothy Drew was inspired to learn more about the scattered bits and pieces of ancient knowledge, philosophy, law, heritage, and culture of his ancient Moorish peoples. He began to travel this old land Amexem and mingled with various tribes of our Aboriginal and Indigenous Moors. Upon this experience, he was resolved to better the conditions of his people. Noble Drew Ali's inspired activities and determination were the impetus for the yet-to-be manifested Moorish Divine and National Movement. This movement was destined to progressively activate the oppressed natural people and change their whole frame of mind, status, and political condition. His work was destined to become a progressive legacy for the defeated Moorish nation in Northwest Africa, Al-Maroc, America. With inspired knowledge and conviction, Noble Drew Ali exposed the fact that the European colonial companies and guilds had systematically usurped the lands and birthrights of the Moors. Europeans used force of arms and fire to destroy many of the Aboriginal and indigenous Moorish scripts, records, and artifacts with the intent to reconstruct and distort the true history of the Americas, Al-Maroc. The prominent purpose for the reconstruction of history was to mentally separate the Aboriginal and indigenous Moors from their nationality, their birthrights, and their lands. This action, based in dedicated Inquisition policies, set up the pattern for political subversion and the usurpation of the Moorish national treasures and resources. We Moors in this day and time suffer the consequences of those century-old acts, even unto today. Noble Drew Ali began his great and profound humanitarian mission in the year 1913 AD, 1333 Moorish calendar, with the founding of the Old Canaanite Temple in Newark, New Jersey Territory, Northwest Africa, North America. The purpose of this organized movement is to uplift fallen humanity. These timely proclamation and declarative acts sealed and marked the inevitable resurgence of Islam in the Western Hemisphere, the science of the ancient Moorish nation. That ancient Moabite Moorish science is often called the old-time religion because it is a reflective of the original nature and function of the ancient philosophies. The nature of the old-time religion deals with and approaches life with holistic studies and views of the universe, which were veiled sometimes in rituals and allegorical stories. The universe is synonymous with the cosmos. Noble Drew Ali was extremely intelligent, insightful, and progressive, and regularly represented the Moorish Divine and National Movement before heads of state and local government officials. He worked diligently for the good of his people, the Moors. Because of his foresight, forward thinking, and wisdom, he was called a prophet by many people. His prophetic abilities were recognized at home and abroad. Thus, the title and attribute Prophet Noble Drew Ali. In the ongoing course of addressing and seeking to correct the nationality and birthright problems facing the Moorish Americans, Noble Drew Ali made a historic trip to Washington, District of Columbia in the year 1925, 345 Moorish calendar. He met with Calvin Coolidge, the President of the United States Republic of America at that time, and planned to attend the inauguration of the next President, Herbert Hoover, to represent the Moorish nation. Drew Ali asked for and received the committed legal acknowledgement and recognized right confirming support for his unalienable and divine right to call his people to national attention. He continued his ongoing mission of teaching his people of the principles of their ancient forefathers. This included the work of restoring Islam and the names, nationality, and birthrights to the Moors of America. Noble Drew Ali's trip to Washington, D.C. also initiated the communal reappearance of and open displaying of the Moorish flag in the public forum in America. The inherited land of the Moors. the Prophet began to effectively uplift the Moorish Americans by teaching them to be themselves. He said, "What your ancient mothers and fathers were, you are today without doubt or contradiction. For those of you who know law, you must remember and never forget that the lawful phrase for being one's own self is in propria persona. This is why we remind you to sign all legal documents accordingly. Let that basic civic knowledge remind you of the importance of studying as the Prophet instructed. On the day 18 of December 1925 AD, 1345 Moorish calendar, the star and crescent appeared in the western sky and was recorded in some of the local newspapers. Prophet Ali consistently inspired the study of all religion from a scientific and spiritual perspective. He maintained a humble and affectionate character with his people. In spite of his noble title, he put unselfish emphasis on progressive Moorish national activity. The reader is encouraged to study and to research more of the available information of Noble Juali's life, works, and teachings. For those who may not have been aware, Noble Juali is also known to the national and international body politic by his free Moorish American national name and title, Sheikh Sharif Abdul Ali. The primary mission of the Moorish movement is to uplift, activate, and raise the Moorish nation peoples of North America who were previously unconscious, self-defeating, and dormant as a sovereign nation. We have much studying to do. Sheikh Sharif Abdul Ali, Noble Juali, as a figure in modern American history, represents the first nationally and internationally recognized Moorish American national representative. Historically, there has been many socially active natural peoples who have worked and struggled against colonial Inquisition slavery, rooted in North America, but all commonly availed historical records show that most all arguments presented on behalf of the enslaved people were presented only in slave brand nomens such as Negro, black, colored, Indian, etc. Noble Juali made and presented a highly impacting argument on behalf of the enslaved natural peoples of North America, who were bearing the above mentioned European coin brands as well as European surnames denoting possession. Noble Juali was consistent and firm in all his dealings with the concerns of the nation and conducted his affairs in his proper person, national identity of Moorish American. The lawful and legal term of being one's own proper self is in propria persona sui juris. This is a major yet often overlooked feature of the uniqueness of the Moorish divine and national movement, established for the reclamation and return of the Moorish nationality and birthrights of all Moorish Americans. And lastly, before we go, we're going to read Newly Awakened Moors, page 23. Many newly awakened Moors, and some already conscious Moors, may from time to time inadvertently find themselves placed amongst unwelcoming, exploitative, opportunistic, or cliquish Moors. Keep in mind the negative conditions, the dead culture of servitude, mental slavery from which we all have come who have suffered under European colonial, psychological, engineering, and suppression. These untoward and discomforting acts are not the norm of true science temple culture. There are some uncultured Moors who have not applied some of the ethical principles taught by Noble Drew Ali. They have carried with them or brought the old black code practices from their servitude indoctrinations into the Moorish movement with them. Some have not yet purged themselves of these behaviors. Be aware that such acts or practices are not the true teachings or programs of the Moorish temples as presented by the Moors, or as presented to the Moors by the Prophet. Unity, love, tolerance, and progress are primal aspects of the mission and are primal to the culture of the Moorish movement. This is why ethical instructions are included as part of the instructions in the divine and national orientations, as they are often given in Sunday school commentaries. The above stated moral principles also apply to any Europeans who have come among the Moors. Some Europeans may oftentimes pretend not to know the true and massively illustrious invocations, connections, and influences made by the Moors, our forefathers, to the founding and initiating of the great Renaissance of Europe during the 14th and 15th centuries. Noble Drew Ali mentions this era in his Message to America document. Study it for yourselves. So we want to say Islam to all the Moors that were online today. And just so we can go over again, today's books was Russia and the Negro by Alison Blakely. Another book to go out and get, Alison Blakely, Blacks in the Dutch World. U.S. Nigger Industry, that you can get from rvbaypublications.com. The Nigger Problem, that you can get from rvbaypublications.com, as well Addressing Misunderstandings of Purpose Concerning Sheikh Sharif Abdul Ali, Noble Drew Ali. And don't forget, for all you online people, right, this weekend, it's been a long time coming, right? Myself and Brother Adiza, it's been a long time since we did a lecture together. So we're going to be dealing with the Django Unchained. It's all about nationality. And that's this Sunday at the Temple, 1704 Eglinton Avenue West, 4 p.m. Sunday, March 10th. And don't forget, the 24th, Moorish Culture Unveiled with Brother Abdullah. And make sure you check out Brother Abdullah Bey's site, moorishcivilletter.net. And we'll just close out with the prayer. Allah, the Father of the universe, Father of love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. Allah is our guide, my protector, and my salvation, by night and by day, through His holy Prophet, Noble Drew Ali. Islam, Islam, Islam. Peace and Hotep Moors. See you on Sunday. Islam.